Welcome in to the Rockies Insider. I am your host, Patrick Lyons, and joining me today is a Diamondbacks insider, Mr. Jesse Friedman from PHNX Diamondbacks. What's going on today, buddy?
I'm great, Patrick. How are you?
Doing well. Less than a month until the winter meetings down in Dallas. Is it always 100 degrees in Dallas, or do they actually have like a winter? I think they do, right?
Well, shockingly, it is no longer 100 degrees in Phoenix, Arizona at this point. So, given the very drastic weather changes that we've had around here, hence why I'm currently wearing a jacket indoors, if you can believe that, I would suspect that things have maybe cooled off out in Dallas, Patrick. I guess we'll find out together.
It's the hot stove season, so it's got to heat up at least a little bit. Figuratively, we'll talk about the Diamondbacks, other teams in the NL West. Dbacks have a lot of decisions to make this offseason, and Silver Slugger Awards were just announced. But I want to say to you, Jesse, happy 100 days until the Diamondbacks and Rockies face off for the Salt River Field's inaugural game of spring training. 100 days is a lot, but it's our first milestone anniversary to start thinking about next season. That's nice.
Yeah, it is. It is. Every time the season ends, Patrick, I tell myself that I'm happy that, to not have baseball in my life every day, at least for a time. It's a good time to rest up and, spend some needed time with family and friends and whatnot, which doesn't happen so much during the season. And then, you get like 3 weeks into the off season without baseball, and it's already like, all right, I don't know what to do with my hands. What do I do with myself when there isn't baseball happening? So, yes, I am already counting down the days for sure.
It feels like October is like halftime off because there's still the playoffs, but unless your team is in it, you don't have to invest, and you certainly know what that was like last year. Look, the Rockies got some news about their opening day 2025 plans. They will most definitely not be playing at Tropicana Field to open against the Rays. Rockies-Rays, not a common matchup on opening day for game one, but Tropicana Field after Hurricane Milton damaged that roofing. It's going to require about $56 million to repair, according to Mark Tompkin of the Tampa Bay Times. So it's not going to be used in 2025. The Rays are going to need to find a new place to play, probably going to be one of the minor league facilities, either in Tampa, where the Yankees do their spring training and where their Florida State League plays, or Clearwater, home of the Phillies in spring training, and their Clearwater minor league team for the Florida State League. So is this a problem, Jesse, that Major League Baseball now is going to have two major league teams playing in a minor league facility now?
Yeah, I was gonna say I think there's a ballpark out in Oakland that's available. Maybe the Tampa Bay Rays could play there. And I guess that'd be sort of going from one coast to the other. That might be a little tricky to pull off logistically. But yeah, it's not great, right? I mean, this has obviously been a very brutal process in a lot of ways out in Oakland with this move to Sacramento, this temporary move to Sacramento. It'll be very interesting to see what that looks like. The Diamondbacks play their first series after the trade deadline in 2024 in that ballpark against I guess they're just the Athletics now. And I'm very curious to see what that looks like. I mean, in some ways, I'm excited for the people of Sacramento to have Major League Baseball in their backyard for the first time. I think that's really exciting. But it's not ideal. It's never ideal when you're putting a major league product in a minor league facility. Yeah, as you're saying, it sounds like that's going to be the case for the Tampa Bay Rays as well. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of solution MLB comes up with. It's a brutal situation all the way around.
And the Rays got that new facility coming in 2028. So what do they do in 2026 and 2027? Question marks. They got their answer. They're supposed to get a new ballpark, and then life is what happens when you're busy making plans, as John Lennon once said. All right, let's get into the Arizona Diamondbacks. Let's start with one of the first changes that they made. How surprising was it that Arizona cleaned house on the coaching side with all of their pitching coaches, assistant pitching coach, bullpen coach Mike Fetters, and then the legend pitching coach Brent Strom, all fired, all let go? How surprising was that for you?
I would say it was surprising. I wouldn't say I was shocked necessarily. When you have a pitching staff as talented as the Diamondbacks appeared to be going into 2024. I mean, we were having conversations on our show about this being potentially a top 5 rotation in baseball. Zac Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Jordan Montgomery, Eduardo Rodriguez, Brandon Pfaadt, who had really come on strong in the postseason in 2023. It had the makings of a really strong group, and the results were very far from that, right? Injuries played a significant role. Certainly, Eduardo Rodriguez missed about 4 months. Merrill Kelly missed about 4 months. And pretty much everyone spent at least some time on the injured list, with the exception of Brandon Pfaadt. He's the only guy who didn't for the Diamondbacks. But I do think that there was some underperformance at the same time. There was, a guy in Jordan Montgomery who came in with high expectations and had a 6.5 ERA. He had the highest ERA in all of baseball among pitchers who threw 100 innings or more. And is that Brent Strom's fault? Like, not necessarily. It's always really hard to separate the player's performance from the pitching coaches. Oftentimes it feels like, firing a pitching coach is sort of just a matter of the pitching coach being the fall guy for a down year. And this certainly has shades of that. But, at the same time, I do think there's some evidence that Brent Strom's working relationships with certain Diamondbacks pitchers were maybe not as good as they could have been. And that's a big deal, right? Brent Strom is certainly well respected around the industry. But if he's not able to if his messages are not coming across in an ideal way with some of the Diamondbacks veteran pitchers, then that's a problem. And I think that might have played a role in why this decision was ultimately made.
And as you said, a lot of those guys are coming back. All of them are coming back. So you're getting the exact same rotation for one more campaign, one more go round. But you've got Gallen, you've got Merrill Kelly, and you've got Jordan Montgomery all on 1-year deals going forward. It's why I know at the GM meeting, it was reported that the Diamondbacks got some significant interests in those teams looking for starting pitchers. That seems like it would be, I'm not going to say too overly aggressive to make a move like that 1 year removed from the World Series. But when you've got 3 guys that are heading towards free agency, the Rockies are dealing with that exact same situation. They are in a different world apart from the Diamondbacks. What does Arizona do? Can they re-sign one? Are they going to have to let one go? Are they going to trade another? A little bit of column A, column B, and column C all combined?
It'll be really interesting to see. I'm sure the Diamondbacks would like to retain a guy like Zac Gallen. He's one of the best pitchers in the game and has been really ever since they acquired him back in 2019 in a trade with the Marlins. Logistically, that's going to be hard to pull off, right? Like, it'll be interesting to see what Corbin Burns gets this offseason, what Max Fried gets this offseason. I think those are decent comps for Zac Gallen. I also think about Aaron Nola and the extension that he got last year with the Phillies, 7 years, $172 million. Those guys are going to inform, I think, what the Zac Gallen market will look like. And it's a little hard to imagine, frankly, a Zac Gallen bidding war ending with the Diamondbacks bringing him back. It's not to say it's impossible, but it's a hard thing to bank on at this point. I think Merrill Kelly, who's also been a really important part of this pitching staff the last couple of years, when healthy, of course, I think he has probably a more realistic chance to return. He's in his mid-30s at this point. I don't think you're looking at a price tag anywhere near what a Gallen contract would look like. So I think given how much he seems to enjoy playing in Arizona, I could see Merrill Kelly returning. That seems more realistic. And then Jordan Montgomery is a fascinating case, right? He picked up his $22.5 million player option for 2025, understandably so. But it's going to be a big year for him, right? Is he able to come out and right the ship and put himself in good position to get a bigger contract next offseason? Or is Jordan Montgomery just not the pitcher that he once was? And he'll, kind of show that in 2025. I think there's a very real chance that the Diamondbacks trade Jordan Montgomery. That's sort of the latest reporting that we've gotten. I know Jeff Passan in his story yesterday said that the Diamondbacks want to move Jordan Montgomery and are willing to eat money in order to do it. So that would not surprise me at all.
And with the comments by owner Ken Kendrick about Jordan Montgomery being a mistake, well, he's still around. So that sort of answers that question in a way. Merrill Kelly is a guy that they extend or bring back. Zac Gallen, a guy who's represented by Scott Boras. As much as you might offer him that contract, that Aaron Nola type deal, he's probably going to wait for free agency to have a little bit of a battle with other teams. And then Jordan Montgomery is the one that gets traded and then saves a little bit of money for the Diamondbacks, because I think some of the reports right now are that Arizona not really looking to have a higher payroll than last year. They've got a little bit of wiggle room. How much is that? And is it probably going to be, some smaller pieces that they add, or could they possibly go out there and try to grab one larger free agent at, say, $15 million annually?
Well, they're coming off a season where they spent bigger than they ever have. Their payroll in 2024 was in the $175 million range, far and away the highest in franchise history. And a lot of that was the result of the postseason run that they went on. You make some decent money when you go that deep in the playoffs, and the Diamondbacks drew widespread praise around the league last offseason for reinvesting that money back in the team. And what we've heard so far is it sounds like the payroll is going to be kind of in that same range. I think somewhere in the $170-175 million range. Maybe it's a little higher, maybe it's a little lower, but it doesn't sound like a team that is looking to make drastic cuts. Even coming off a disappointing year where they missed the postseason. Right now, they do have a decent amount of money committed. They're somewhere between 140 and 150. I think maybe a little closer to 150, given the options that have been picked up so far. And if you factor in some of the arbitration estimates on some of their ARB eligible guys. So they don't have a ton of wiggle room necessarily, but if they're in the 145, 150 range, I think that gives them maybe 25, maybe $30 million to play around with this offseason, something in that range. And there's a lot of different routes that you can go to use that money. I guess another variable here is whether they trade Jordan Montgomery and are able to get off at least a portion of that contract. That could give them a little bit more money to spend in free agency as well. So I wouldn't rule out them going out and getting a player who makes a decent amount of money, but it's going to be hard to bring back everyone, right? It's Christian Walker, it's Jock Peterson, Randall Grichuk. The total value of all of those guys is probably going to be higher than what the Diamondbacks have to spend this offseason.
And even if they can trade Montgomery and then possibly affording at least this year Juan Soto, probably not going to happen. Mike in the chat saying Giants will not be meeting with Scott Boras and Juan Soto. We'll talk about more of the NL West here coming up in the second part in the show. But as you mentioned, Christian Walker, kind of the big outstanding question mark. He's got a qualifying offer. November 19th is that date for him to make that decision that he'll come back or go try his luck on the free agent market, which really seems like it's probably the best option for him. So the question becomes, can the Diamondbacks possibly reach an agreement with Walker for multiple years? Or do you go with a more short-term decision with a guy like Paul Goldschmidt? Organization knows both of those guys very well. Or is there a third option that you could see them going with?
Well, the Goldie conversation is interesting. We've discussed that on our show a few times, and it seems like Diamondbacks fans are very split on that question, and they have very strong opinions. There are some Diamondbacks fans who, of course, would love to have Paul Goldschmidt back in Sedona Red. Maybe he could finish his career here. How cool would that be? Given the player that he's been in the past, you figure that he could bounce back from a down year and have a nice season. There's another group of Diamondbacks fans who want no part of Paul Goldschmidt at this stage in his career. They've seen this franchise, get a little too reliant at times on players who were good and who were great maybe in years past, but are not necessarily in that same position at this stage in their career. And you can definitely make a case that Goldschmidt is kind of at that level. I do think that Goldschmidt is in play. There have been reports along those lines that the Diamondbacks are at least expected to make some sort of a run at him this offseason. I do think they could go another route as well. The trade market is interesting in this regard. I think Josh Naylor of the Guardians is a guy who might get moved. Nathaniel Lowe of the Texas Rangers. Maybe there's a scenario where you could pry him away. Yandy Diaz of the Tampa Bay Rays. I think they might be at least willing to entertain offers for him this offseason. So there's a variety of options. I don't have a great sense of what direction the Diamondbacks will ultimately go. But what we do know so far is that the market for Christian Walker seems to be robust, at least from the limited reporting that we've gotten. I think Bob Nightingale said there's 6 teams, maybe more, that are already planning to pursue him pretty aggressively, and the New York Yankees are one of them. And when you're in a bidding war of sorts with the New York Yankees, it doesn't feel like a recipe for Walker to come back to Arizona.
It's also fascinating to think that the team you cover is acquiring really good players rather than just discussing trading them away to lower payroll. So that's a fascinating concept altogether. I know Mike Hazen did say on Arizona Sports that the club was also targeting some back end relievers. Paul Sewald, ultimately, not getting the job done. Justin Martinez, AJ Puck, both there. Puck, was incredible after coming over from the Marlins from the left-hand side. And hey, nothing wrong with a left-handed closer. We know the success that Josh Hader has had recently and years prior, Aroldis Chapman. But if you can have a power lefty in the 7th or 8th to get those big left-handed bats, that just makes your bullpen all the more deeper. And so bringing in a closer certainly would be good. Are there any guys that you think the Diamondbacks might be looking at more than any other, or players that you like more than any other? And is Carlos Estevez one of them?
Yeah, Carlos Estevez is an interesting name for sure. I do think the Diamondbacks would like to get someone who has closing experience if they can. You mentioned Paul Sewald. He was an enormous part of what they were able to accomplish in 2023. He got off to a great start in 2024 and then had about as bad of a July as you could possibly imagine and was removed from the closing role and got hurt toward the end of the season. So I do think the Diamondbacks really value having someone with experience in that role, even though, as you said, Justin Martinez, like he filled in pretty nicely in that role down the stretch. And AJ Puck certainly pitched like someone who could close games for you. But yes, if they can, I think they would like to find someone with closing experience. Carlos Estevez is certainly an option there. There's some other guys available in free agency, someone like Kirby Yates, someone like Kenley Jansen. The trade market, I think, is also interesting. Devin Williams, it seems like there's a chance he gets moved. We're about to discuss Ryan Helsley from the St. Louis Cardinals as a potential option there. So we haven't gotten a whole lot of reporting at this point in terms of who the Diamondbacks specifically might be looking to go after. But we do know the back end bullpen help is a priority. And if they can, at least I think it makes sense to try to get someone that you can plug into that closing role. And then, as you said, use AJ Puck against, the best left-handed hitters that may come up in the 7th or 8th inning, move Justin Martinez down to a setup role that I think would suit him really well. And then you've got some really good depth behind those guys in Kevin Ginkel and Ryan Thompson as well. So if they're able to get someone who's a bona fide closer, I think this has a chance to be one of the better bullpens in the league in 2025.
And I know you know this well, as a game can be won or lost when Ohtani and Freeman are up. That's the inning where you the save, not necessarily the 9th. So if you can have Puck early on with somebody else in the 9th, and the Diamondbacks have a lot of options, and it's all about dominoes. It's all about putting out those feelers and seeing where you can get the price, best value. Once one guy is off the board, that changes the dynamics for everything. So I'm sort of wondering, going back to Christian Walker, if he needs to wait for the Pete Alonso market to figure itself out, and then because of that, Pete Alonso is waiting for the Juan Soto market to settle. And we know sometimes the dominoes don't always fall that way because, again, some guys, look, I'll take the offer that's available rather than waiting an extra month or 2 or 3. We saw how that worked out for a lot of the Boras clients last year. Do you think Alonso will go first before Christian Walker? I know there's a lot we don't know, but do you see that being the logical strategy for Walker and his representation?
That's a great question. Yeah, I'm not really sure. On one hand, it does make sense, right? Like we generally see the guys at the top of the market go first, and then it sort of sets the market for everyone else. At the same time, I'm not sure if Pete Alonso's market necessarily says a whole lot about Christian Walker's market. They are in pretty different stages of their career. They're 3 or 4 years apart. Christian Walker, obviously a little bit older. So yeah, I think, maybe the average annual value of Pete Alonso, like whatever that number is set at, maybe that sets Christian Walker's AAV a few $1 million below. But I could also see a scenario where maybe Christian Walker goes earlier than that. It's an interesting situation because Alonso, I do think, is at the top of the market. He's certainly going to get paid the most, but I'm not necessarily sure that Pete Alonso is a clearly more desirable player than Christian Walker. You look at wins above replacement numbers and whatnot in recent seasons. Alonso might grade out a little better offensively, but Christian Walker is the best defensive first baseman in the league. And so, it doesn't feel like Walker is a consolation prize necessarily if you miss out on Alonso, which is sort of how we see these situations play out. With other situations in free agency where everyone wants the guy at the top of the market, and then everyone who misses out sort of, works their way down the line.
Yeah, I would agree. They are a lot closer in value than people would realize. And by overall value, we're talking about the fact that Alonso is going to be looking to make $100 million plus, and you understand that. But how is that contract? How is he going to age at the 4th and 5th year? Whereas with Walker, it's going to be a shorter term commitment. We know that defense doesn't go downhill quite the same way as offense does. So you're getting a much more sure thing for the next 2-3 years that you feel good about without having to tack on year 4, 5, maybe even 6, depending on what he's looking for. So you're right. I think Alonso is probably the first guy to go off the board, all things being treated equal. But once Alonso's gone, now if you need that big thumping first baseman that can pick it over there, now that's when all the teams that missed out on Alonso or already missed out on Juan Soto, now they're going to be in on Christian Walker, and his market could get interesting. Rockies are looking to subtract. Diamondbacks are looking to add just a little bit. I don't know if there's any perfect matches between the two clubs, but it might surprise you that the Rockies and Diamondbacks have only come together for 6 trades in their combined histories. And the last one was in 2012, Ryan Wheeler for Matt Reynolds. That's just wild. That's just wild.
Yeah, that is crazy. I was gonna ask you when the most recent one was, because I didn't even remember the last time that the Diamondbacks and the Rockies actually made a trade. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's sort of the case around the league, right? You don't necessarily make trades with your division rival. At least we don't see those things too often. So I don't know how long we're gonna have to wait, Patrick. What's the over under on the number of years we have to wait for another Diamondbacks Rockies trade?
I mean, technically, I feel like it's impossible because after 2017, I think somewhere on someone's, the Rockies universal cell phone, they clicked delete and block. So now you can't contact each other because of that. It's like all those texts that we got from political pundits here and there.
Oh, yes.
Political ads in October. So I don't know if they're ever going to call each other. I did find it interesting that technically you can say the first trade that the Diamondbacks ever made was with the Rockies because it did occur right after the expansion draft. So I find that fascinating. But yeah, these two clubs just don't really want to do business with each other anymore. And I'm sure the Diamondbacks would. The Rockies are interesting in that way, to say the least. All right, Jesse Friedman here from PHNX Diamondbacks, talking off-season, talking award winners, talking about broadcasting rights. It's gotten messy, but one thing that's not messy is the Silver Slugger Awards. A lot of clear and present favorites that ended up winning. 14 first-time winners, or rather 14 teams won a Silver Slugger Award, including 7 first-time winners. Jose Altuve and Mookie Betts taking home their 7th Silver Slugger, something only 16 players have ever accomplished since the award was created in 1980. And it's kind of surprising. Ketel Marte just won his first.
It is surprising. Yeah, I had to double check that yesterday when we were putting out this news, because I was like, well, certainly Ketel Marte won the award in 2019. But 2019 was kind of a weird year for him because he played he played center field for the most part, but he also played second base. It was almost a 50-50 split. So kind of a weird year for him in that sense. But this year there were no questions, Patrick. You look at no disrespect to, I believe it was Jonathan India and Luis Garcia of the Washington Nationals, who were the other finalists at second base in the National League. No disrespect to those guys, but I don't think either of them are going to be getting any MVP votes this year. And Ketel Marte absolutely is. So, it was an unbelievable year for him. Exactly what the Diamondbacks needed, particularly with Corbin Carroll having a very rough first half, which is, of course, well documented at this point. He was outstanding for them in 2024, and a huge reason why they scored significantly more runs than any other team in baseball, which in retrospect is still sort of dumbfounding to me.
Yeah, and maybe Ketel Marte was somewhat of a test case for what they do now at the Silver Slugger Award. They award it to a utility player, a guy who wasn't at one true position. So had that award been around in 2019, Marte definitely would have won it. Betts, that's how he ends up getting his Silver Slugger Award. Mookie Betts is now one of only 8 players to earn at least 6 Gold Gloves and 6 Silver Sluggers. Altuve, with his 7th Silver Slugger Award, now ties Hall of Famer Ryan Sandberg for most by any second baseman. I got to know, is Jose Altuve going to have issues getting into the Baseball Hall of Fame?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't think he should. He's been, as you're saying, one of the best at his position for really as long as I can remember. Obviously, the trash can thing was what it was. And I know that he had at least some role in that. But yeah, it's similar, I guess, to the steroid conversations or whatnot. And in general, I'm pretty pro put the guy in the Hall of Fame if he's a transcendent player. I think it's pretty clear at this point that Jose Altuve was not in any way dependent on, that cheating scandal in order to be a very, very good Major League Baseball player. So I would have no issues putting Jose Altuve in the Hall of Fame personally.
And by the time he ends up being on a ballot, you'll be a voter. So that is certainly something interesting to keep an eye on. I think there's a chance he goes the Roberto Alomar route, where he doesn't get in the first year despite being pretty much a no doubt Hall of Famer, and then he gets in year 2. So he's very clearly a Hall of Famer that did not need the trash can banging situation. But you can make the same case about Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds before they started taking performance-enhancing drugs. A whole other conversation altogether. Bryce Harper wins his first Silver Slugger at first base. And also his 3rd position. He's now won one in the outfield, DH, first base, only 4th player to ever do that. The other National League Silver Sluggers, William Contreras, Lindor, Machado, Marte, as we said, at second base. Jackson Merrill, who is only the 5th rookie outfielder to win a Silver Slugger Award, behind Ichiro Suzuki, Mike Trout, Aaron Judge, Julio Rodriguez, and he won't even be the Rookie of the Year award winner. That's kind of wild to think about. Teoscar Hernandez and Jurickson Profar also win a Silver Slugger, in addition to Ohtani, Betts, and the Dodgers winning it for the Team Silver Slugger Award. Were you a little bit surprised that the Diamondbacks didn't win that award, since they did score the most runs in all of baseball?
Yeah, it's kind of a bizarre award. I don't really know exactly what the criteria are supposed to be. It feels to me like if you score the most runs, then you probably should win it. So that is a little bit odd to me. I know the Dodgers certainly have bigger names. The way that the Diamondbacks scored the most runs in baseball was playing the matchups. And I think a lot of it had to do with how the guys at the bottom of their lineup were league average hitters or a little bit better. Whereas the Dodgers did have a few players that got significant plate appearances during the season that were, below average producers offensively. So I'm not hugely surprised. The Dodgers are the Dodgers. They have Ohtani and Betts and Freeman and Teoscar and all these huge names, but it does feel a little bit odd for the team who scored the most runs to not win that award.
Agreed. In the American League, Salvador Perez, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Altuve, Bobby Witt Jr., Jose Ramirez, Anthony Santander, the 2 Yankees, Judge and Soto, Brent Rooker at DH, and Josh Smith of the Rangers at utility, with Yankees winning the Team Silver Slugger Award. Trivia question, Jesse, and there's a reason I'm asking you this. Albert Pujols has won 6 Silver Slugger Awards. He won at 3 different positions: first base, third base, and outfield. 4 of those came at first base. Did you know that he does not have the most Silver Slugger Awards for any first baseman? In fact, someone tied him. There's another first baseman that has 4 Silver Sluggers, and there's another first baseman that has won 5, and there's a reason I am saying this to you. Hint, hint, hint.
I'm guessing Paul Goldschmidt is involved in this conversation somehow.
He's got 5. Paul Goldschmidt has
Wow.
the most Silver Slugger Awards of any first baseman.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
Wild to think about. And then who also has 4?
Another Diamondback has 4 Silver Sluggers at first base.
I'm pointing to myself. That's why
you're pointing to yourself. Okay. All right. This is my flawed setup where I can't actually see you as I'm doing this. I would imagine that Todd Helton probably has 4.
Ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding. That's right. Yeah. Again, you put that in perspective and you go, oh, yeah. I mean, I guess there's a reason why Todd Helton's a Hall of Famer. And I guess there's a pretty easy reason to see why Paul Goldschmidt ends up in Cooperstown at some point, too. Hey, Jose Ramirez, 5th Silver Slugger Award at third base. Only Mike Schmidt and Wade Boggs have 1 more. So, man, this broadcasting business with Diamond Sports Group, every day it's something else. It's definitely not the thing that we love about baseball. Like, we want to cover the games, we want to cover the players, we want to cover the behind the scenes stuff in the minor leagues, but getting into the business side of things is just wild. We've got 3 more teams that are going to be handled by MLB TV: Minnesota Twins, Cleveland Guardians, Milwaukee Brewers for next year. Looks like the Reds are also going to join that group after they were cut loose by the Diamond Sports Group. How much do you keep tabs on this? And is any of it just because the simple fact that the Diamondbacks were one of the first 2 teams to suffer the consequences of this, all falling apart?
Yeah, I'm very happy that I don't have to keep tabs on it right now, to be honest with you. It was, reading through all of this legal jargon and trying to understand exactly what all of these terms actually mean. It was not a fun time. I'm sort of happy that as someone who covers the Diamondbacks, I got that out of the way early, as they've now been, broadcast by Major League Baseball since the middle of last year. But yeah, it continues to be a saga. I am somewhat shocked that Diamond Sports Group has a pulse at all at this point. It felt like this was heading toward, every single team that was involved with them having to switch gears pretty soon after the Diamondbacks did. I know they've kind of been able to hold on to some teams longer than at least I expected. But yeah, I mean, it was, just speaking from the Diamondbacks perspective, it was kind of a big deal. Like, I don't know exactly how much money they're pulling in now in TV revenue, but I do know that it is a lot less than what it was under their previous TV arrangement with Diamond Sports Group. So, talking about payrolls and the team setting a franchise record for payroll this past year, like, what could that franchise record have looked like if they had the extra, 20, 30 million, whatever that number was that they missed out on in TV revenue? Maybe this is a Diamondbacks team that actually could be in the top half of spenders. And we just have not been able to see that. And I'm not sure there's really a path to recovering all of that lost TV revenue anytime soon.
It's interesting that the Padres and the Diamondbacks, the first 2 teams that suffered this fate and lost out on, tens of millions of dollars because of losing their broadcasting rights and their stations folding essentially. And yet that really didn't hamper their spending, right? Like you said, they might've been able to spend more, but they were still able to go out, be creative, and add some big name free agents. Conversely, the Rockies right now, despite still bringing in, about $2.6 million in attendance, are actually cutting payroll. So that's somewhat strange. Sticking with the NL West, the Giants, what are they going to do this offseason? They spent $206 million in 2024, so they exceeded the luxury tax threshold for the first time since 2018. And they're probably not going to go out and sign anyone that got a qualifying offer. That's one of the reasons why Mike said in the chat they will not be targeting Juan Soto. They can't afford to really be giving up a draft pick to do that. But there's still a lot of quality free agents out there for new president of baseball operations Buster Posey to target. Shortstop Ha-Seong Kim, right-hander Shane Bieber, Walker Buehler, no qualifying offer for him, Tyler O'Neill, Jurickson Profar. They're definitely a shortage of middle infielders this year. Do you think that despite the fact that they're going to have to cut payroll, they can still add somebody of significant measure?
Well, first of all, just hearing the phrase "President of Baseball Operations Buster Posey" is still going to take some serious getting used to. I'm not quite there yet, but yeah, it's a fascinating offseason for the Giants. I mean, it feels like they've sort of been stuck in the middle here for a while, at least going back to that very random 2021 season where they inexplicably won 107 games or whatever it was. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what Buster Posey's vision for that franchise is. I do think one priority that I would have if I were the Giants would be getting a legitimate shortstop. You mentioned Ha-Sung Kim. I think he could be a great fit for them. As someone who's watched the Diamondbacks play the Giants a number of times here over these last few years, watching the revolving door of San Francisco shortstops has been pretty rough. It just feels like defensively, they have not had any kind of stability in the middle infield for a number of years at this point. And I think that would do them a lot of good. You know, I think it's easy to overlook how important it is to be solid defensively up the middle. It's something the Diamondbacks have seemingly had for, as long as I can remember at this point. So if they can find a way to shore up defensively up the middle, I think that would at least be a good starting point for them.
Our buddy Chris in the chat without saying it, Bradley Zimmer. Jesse, are you buying in that the only thing that the Giants need is Bradley Zimmer? You don't have to answer that one. Sorry, Chris. Also in the NL West, or rather sticking with the Giants, Andrew Bagley of The Athletic saying that while they're looking to cut payroll a little bit, that they got a couple guys, making some decent money in arbitration that they could look to deal. Lamont Wade Jr. set to make about $4 to $5 million in arbitration. Camilo Doval, who I think every team is salivating over, $3 million in his first go around in arbitration. And then Mike Yastrzemski, who feels like he could be a poor man's version of Jock Peterson. Like maybe he is that guy that I could see fitting in really well for the Diamondbacks. Any of those names interest you on behalf of the Diamondbacks?
On behalf of the Diamondbacks, probably not. I mean, I guess Lamont Wade Jr., like that wouldn't be a terrible replacement for a Christian Walker at first base. But, going back to the idea of interdivision trades, we just don't see it very often. It's kind of hard for me to imagine. And I don't know, like if I'm the Giants and I am in a position to have to cut some payroll, like paying Lamont Wade Jr. $4 million or whatever it's going to be at first base, you do a lot worse than that. It's going to be hard to find a better first base situation for anything less. So, I don't, those are tough names. Like, I don't think any of those guys is netting you a ton in a trade necessarily. And they're kind of, nice guys to have on your team, like at least solid average regulars who can go out there every day and help you stay in some baseball games.
2005 was the last real trade made between the Giants and Diamondbacks. You thought it was bad between Rockies and Diamondbacks. Matt Hergis and some cash for Doug DeVore. We're pretty much looking at 4 trades ever between these two.
That's crazy. Matt Hergis is, I think he's still in the Diamondbacks organization. But yeah, he was a pitching coach for them as well. So it's kind of crazy to hear that name number of years after the fact. 2005 that's impressive though. We're going on 20 years since a Dbacks Giants trade.
That is crazy. And fun fact, Matt Hergis, the only pitcher to play with all 5 NL West clubs. The only hitter, Steve Finley.
Oh, huh.
All right, question about, we know the Dodgers are in a class unto themselves in the NL West. Does it feel like each offseason when we get to it that the Padres are also in that class? Like they're really in on just about any free agent, despite the fact that they've already got 3 or 4 $300 million contracts on the books. But, they got prospects. They're not afraid to trade them. There's always a new one coming up each and every year, a handful. They're not afraid to wheel and deal. Are the Padres now in that class with the Dodgers and many other teams as, hey, we can get just about anybody that we want, or we're at least going to be in conversation to get anybody out there?
Yeah, I feel like the Padres still feel like the little brother to me. I think they might have had an opportunity this year in the postseason to kind of change that narrative a little bit, and they had the 2-1 lead and they didn't do it. So yeah, and in terms of just the finances as well, Peter Seidler, the late Peter Seidler, one of the great losses of the baseball community here over the last year or so. I think he was a really important part of the Padres going out there and being as aggressive as they were. It's not really a very big market when it comes to baseball franchises, at least in Major League Baseball, right? They were spending, as far as we know, above and beyond their means during those years where Peter Seidler was there. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like moving forward. But they're still a very well-run team. I mean, the way that they draft and develop, especially on the international amateur side of things, just seems like AJ Preller knows how to acquire great young talent. And there's a reason the Padres are able to just keep making these big trades, like trading for Juan Soto, trading for Dylan Cease. Like, they just know how to acquire the kind of young talent that the teams desire. So they're going to continue to be formidable going into next year. I have no doubt. I'm not sure if they're going to do anything super splashy this offseason, but they're going to be a factor in the NL West in 2025 and probably for many years to come.
I really think Roki Sasaki could be that guy for them. And I'll say this is that, the Padres, they are definitely not a draft and develop team because we've seen them operate in free agency and make trades. They are a draft and trade team.
Right.
It's basically, hey, look, this guy's got some great value, and we don't know if he's gonna develop into this superstar. There's plenty of guys that are top 100 prospects that are never top 100 big leaguers. So you might as well wheel and deal with that in mind. Juan Soto, is he going to break the $500 million mark? He's got it, right?
Yeah, I think 500 is probably pretty easy in my mind. 600 is the threshold that I'm thinking about of could he possibly get past 600? My guess is he probably won't. I think it'll probably land somewhere between 5 and 6. But yeah, I mean, it's not every day that you have, like, I don't know if he's the best player in baseball, but he's certainly in that conversation. And he's also 26 years old. Like, those guys just don't hit free agency basically ever, right? And I know that Ohtani just got $700 million, but there were so much money that was deferred. So it was really a present day value of 460 or whatever. I think Juan Soto is at least gonna beat the 460 number. Maybe he threatens 700. I'm not really expecting it, but his market is going to be one of the biggest storylines of the offseason for sure.
Yeah, it seemed like half a billion was definitely going to happen for Ohtani, present day money. It is a little surprising, especially after the season that he just had. You go, what a steal that the Dodgers only had to invest $460+ million in him. So yeah, it seems as if Soto should be able to get 600, but he more likely than not will fall short. If Ohtani couldn't get 500 million, then Soto getting 600 million, I'm not sure. In the chat, question being asked about the Blue Jays. Blue Jays are in on Juan Soto. They're reportedly, along with the Boston Red Sox, going to meet with Juan Soto and Scott Boras. And the Blue Jays, in a similar vein as the Giants, they are the two teams that always seem to be in on these big guys, right? Whether it's Carlos Correa, Aaron Judge, whoever, you name it, Ohtani, and they can't get it done. Are the Jays going to maybe have some luck and really push all in the final season under control for Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr.?
It's hard for me to see. I mean, the Blue Jays at this point, I think, might need to come to terms with kind of what they are right now, which is sort of a middling baseball team. I mean, even imagining the Toronto Blue Jays with Juan Soto, is that a playoff team? Like, I think it probably is, but I'm not totally sure. They don't seem to me to be in a great position to make that investment right now. I think that in terms of big time investments, their focus should be on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I think if the Blue Jays let Vlad go anywhere else, that would be a massive mistake. And I'm not sure. I mean, I know they've generally run fairly healthy payrolls, but I'm not sure that they're going to be able to carry both of those guys on long-term deals. So I would just be trying to extend Vladimir Guerrero Jr. more than anything else if I'm Toronto.
Dodgers, Yankees, Mets seem to be three most obvious suitors that are going to go after Juan Soto. Would you rather take 2 of those teams and or would you rather the field, the other 28?
Oh, that's fascinating. I think I would take Yankees Mets over the field.
Okay.
I don't feel super confident that the Dodgers will go there. I think that the Dodgers are always in on every big time free agent. Like, I don't know if there's ever been a big time free agent that's hit the market where the Dodgers weren't at least mentioned. So it's not that surprising to me to see the Dodgers at least in that conversation. I think they're probably more sitting back, kind of waiting to see what the contract looks like. Maybe there's a scenario where the numbers would make sense for them. But to me, this just seems like sort of the Subway Series Juan Soto style of, who's willing to pay more money. And ultimately, it's really hard for me to imagine the Yankees allowing Soto to get away from them. That'd be a pretty rough look. I don't think Yankees Twitter would take too well to Juan Soto, switching jerseys and going over to Queens. So I think that he'll probably end up with the Yankees, or at the very least, I think he's going to end up with one of those 2 New York teams.
So just pick the state of New York. That covers it. You're right. The way you just phrased it is exactly right. The Yankees are not going to allow that to happen, just like they didn't allow Aaron Judge to leave. Different situation since he was a career Yankee. But before I get you out of here, just make sure, let's put this on the calendar for next March, Jesse. All right. You, me, Derek, Damon Dog. We are Damon's dogs.
Yes. Bark, bark.
Next March in Tucson, World Baseball Classic qualifiers, China, Germany, Brazil, Colombia. 2 teams take a spot in the 2026 WBC. Road trip, right, baby?
Yeah. Hey, I'm up for it. Although I have sort of branded myself on our show as being kind of a Tucson hater. So you guys might have to drag me down there a little bit, but Damon is a Tucson native and he speaks very highly of the Mexican food. And if anything can get me down to Tucson, what you're discussing with the WBC, also intriguing, but the Mexican food would probably get me there more than anything else. So I'm probably down.
Look, all 4 of us have gone to some pretty interesting places to get some Mexican food in the past. So I thought you were going to say he's from Tucson and he speaks Tucson, which I guess he does. Jesse, go ahead and plug away. Let folks know where they can get all your great content.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter or on X, I guess, if you prefer, at Jesse N. Friedman over there. You can find our Diamondback show. We go live 5 days a week on YouTube. We are on the PHNX Sports YouTube channel, so you can find that, subscribe, like our shows, do all the things. We're also on all the podcast apps, so Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those good audio platforms. You can find us there as well. So yeah, if you're interested in Diamondbacks coverage, we've got a whole lot of it, not only in the season but year round as well.
Are you guys streaming over on MySpace anymore?
The MySpace stream, unfortunately, it just ended. Yeah, much to my chagrin. I guess it wasn't worth the investment anymore at a certain point. But yeah, maybe it comes back someday, Patrick. We've seen stranger things.
I love it. Hey, I appreciate everybody investing in this show and investing in me and Rockies Insider at Patrick D. Lyons, at Patrick D. Lyons MLB. Like, share, subscribe, do that whole thing. Jesse, as I like to say, you've given me a lot of momentum. It's very obvious that you've done that. But unfortunately, just like when it comes to starting pitching, my momentum is only as good as my next show. So I'll talk to you then.